Go ahead and get. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Cindy Lauderdale. I am your National NACAA Horticulture and Turfgrass Committee Chair. I have served in this role. This is my fourth year, so this will be my end. But I've really enjoyed being part of this committee, whether it was as a vice chair or a chair position. We have Heather with us from the North Central District. Danny, I don't believe is on. He's from the South. And Jenny, I haven't seen her on yet, but she's from the Northeast, and Andy is here from the West. So that your committee meets monthly. We plan a pre-tour. We have horticulture abstracts, and that is what we're going to focus on today. We have decided to kind of create a new rubric that we think will be more beneficial to agents who work in horticulture, as some of our great programs aren't necessarily very easy to evaluate. And we are going to show you that new rubric. Heather will go over that with you, and then we'll show you some examples of good abstracts or how to improve an abstract. And with that, I will turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Cindy. So this is truly a team effort, but as we get started, here's kind of our plan for today. As Cindy said, we're going to spend some time reviewing the new rubric, or the updated rubric, I guess, that our committee put together. I've kind of just pulled some real simple tips and tricks, and I think you'll probably collect some of those as you go through and see some of those examples that we share. And then we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to answer any questions. So if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Feel free to unmute or stop us. I'm not opposed to that, as I'm sure my other peers on the committee are not.
And Heather, I'll watch the chat for you.
Okay, sounds great. So I think it's important to start, if you haven't had a chance to visit the NACAA website, the updated rubric is posted there. So I just grabbed an image from that. You can review it. You can review it there, or you can download a copy of the picture and take a look at that. But we're going to walk through it. It's basically three parts. So the first part really relates to the style and the formatting. The requirements that are there to submit that. The second portion is, I think, much where our focus will be today, which is abstract content. So whether you're submitting a research or horticultural research or turfgrass research abstract, or an educational programming abstract, that content has a pretty heavy weight to it. And then the last part is the applicability or the replication of the material that's being submitted. And so it's basically on a 100-point scale. And so 30 of those points are dedicated to style and formatting, 10 points then to applicability and replication. And as I said before, heavy weight placed on the content of the actual abstract itself. And if you look at some of the other things that are placed out there, we would say at least 150 word minimum. But I would tell you, if you have 350 words to use them, and use them wisely. So that's my advice, the 350 word maximum. So if you're not sure how to do that, make sure that you're counting your words in your abstract, and you're aware of that. Okay, so basically we're going to kind of work through these three parts. The first part is that style and formatting. And so this is comprised of obviously format, style, and grammar, punctuation. So all of those things have an equal weight. So when we look at writing styles, making sure that we're following the ABCs. So are we accurate? Are we, does it exhibit brevity? So is it clear, concise, and well written? To be able to do that. And you can see that there's a list of writing style considerations. These have come from, I believe it's Eric, and I'll share some resources and references at the end of the presentation. But again, format, that's kind of like following the instructions, and then, making sure that we have correct grammar and punctuation in our writing style. So that's kind of that first piece of 30 points. The second piece would be the actual content. And this is maybe where there's some differences. We've tended to break those out in the hopes that folks can, if they're doing research, there are some core pieces, right, that we need to be able to discuss. And you can see that they match the educational components over there. So the educational components based on our extension logic models, and the research based on scientific presentations through Eric and other faculty-based references. But context is what we refer to in research as kind of like that statement of issue or need. We call it an issue or need in our educational abstracts. Purpose in research would be our objectives and our hypothesis, right? In education, those would be objectives. One thing that we do add in our education is who's our target audience? Who are we hoping to target in this particular program or project that we're describing? Materials and methodology, very similar for both. Findings, so discussion of data and results on the research side, right, versus report of results. And so that's what did we do and who did we do it with, right? So those are things like, how many participants, how many sessions, those kinds of things in the educational side. And then for research, our conclusion and application, so the significance of that research versus evaluation and impact on the side. So evaluation and impact, looking at those outcomes. So did we collect, did we do an evaluation of our program or project? Did we have data that we were collecting from those participants? And what did they learn? What changes are they willing to make? If we're looking at it from a producer-based side of things, or maybe a commercial horticulture side of things, what's the cost benefit, right? In other words, is the producer or the commercial horticulture person or turf grass, is there an opportunity for them to save money? What are some of those longer term impacts that we might see there? So this is the content that's worth a lot, and it can be tough to get that information into, right? 350 words. So we have to be mindful about how we're selecting that. And then the last section is the applicability or the replication. In other words, this is kind of where you have to put on your creative hat and you have to think, is the content that I'm submitting, is this going to be applicable, right, to other regions? And we can give an example of that here shortly. But is it replicable? Is it easy, right? If I'm looking at doing an educational project or program, are there pieces or parts of this that I can take back to me with to my state, right, and replicate a similar program? For applicability, I'll give an example from the research side of things. So if you're working as a team conducting, say, like a specialty crop research project over a multi-county area, encourage you to kind of think about what makes that work or why that's important, and then come in and maybe talk about the actual project. So if it is specific, and I'll give an example here, let's just say apples, right, out of that. Most of us, not every part of the country, right, necessarily grows apples commercially, but we have some large spots. And so there might be a particular type of apple that can be grown in a particular region of this country. And we may say, well, our region doesn't really do a lot with apples or that particular variety. But I would encourage you to think about just the general, make it a little more general, come to terms with being creative and thinking about how working together as a group of multi-county educators, right, across a particular, particular area that focuses on growing a specific crop, and how that could be replicable or applicable to maybe growing onions in the southern region or small grains in, the central part of the U.S., north central part of the U.S. So it's really about looking at, whether or not all of us as educators, when we're attending a conference, right, can have something to take back to our states, or think differently maybe about how we might design or develop programs. So tips and tricks. Just wanted to make sure that we point out that one of the key components to submitting an abstract or submitting, getting your submission on board is to make sure that you read, that you understand, and that you follow the submission guidelines and instructions. Those are things that can easily bring you down in points, maybe knock you out if certain things are not included or certain things are not applied. I just took a snapshot here from the NACAA website that talks about submitting abstracts. This came from the poster guidelines. And so again, making sure that you understand that there are specific requests, right, for certain submissions that you need to be aware of and follow. And these are like a little checklist that you probably should make sure that you're checking off when you're getting ready to do that. So it's just very important that you understand and follow those instructions and guidelines, because that fits in right to the formatting of your abstract. Get familiar with the evaluation rubric, or if it's just an evaluation score sheet, make sure that you've had an opportunity or taken an opportunity to look at that. That's going to give you insight into what the committee members are looking for. And so there is a general one posted again on our NACAA website, and that's important. Again, you have 350 words to use, but again, make sure that you use them wisely, answering those questions that you see in the rubric, or at least addressing the points made in the rubric that are going to be scored. And then, of course, we want to see those in proper grammatic fashion. So we would like to see complete sentences so that it reads fluently and makes sense. I oftentimes look at writing these from the perspective, who's going to read these? Again, who's the end user? And so if these are other education professionals, there are certain expectations of things they're looking for, right? I recommend using the questions that are in the abstract content to create a rough draft. And I'll give you an example here in a little bit of how I do that. It's just maybe one way that might work for you if you're struggling to try to figure out how you're going to condense a very large project with a lot of information into a 350 word paragraph. And then the questions in style and format and the applicability and replication, those are the opportunities to review that, right? Those are things that you can look at, review, and ask yourself questions. But it's really good too to have, if you have peers or someone that you trust to review or proof your work, I think that makes for a great opportunity before you actually submit it. So I'm just going to quickly walk through, this was an abstract that I had done during COVID, actually. I think this was maybe in 2021 I submitted this abstract. So it wouldn't have been evaluated against this particular rubric, but it would have met the general criteria. So I chose to just give you an example of how we could create a draft, or at least pull together information into an abstract from the actual questions that are on the rubric or a worksheet. And so in this case, we're focusing on, this is an educational abstract. So mine was on our virtual community education sessions that are that were run by our Master Gardener program. We call those Garden Java. And you can just see that I start with bullets. And so when we're looking at the issue or need, what are some of those things that are driving the need for this particular program, or what issues? So we were in a pandemic, we had challenges to in-person programming. There was a need for members of the community and the gardening public, right, to seek education because they were stuck at home, they couldn't get out. And so they were doing a lot more gardening, right? There's some national data out there that showed that gardening and all kinds of outdoor nature-focused activities were on the rise during COVID. Our objectives were pretty simple, and that was to provide community horticulture and gardening education, as well as continuing education for our Master Gardener volunteers. And then at the bottom here, I've just showed the actual sentences or the actual part of the abstract that took these bullet points and pulled them together. Okay. So that's one particular example there. moving along with the same abstract, our target audience here, we had community members and Master Gardener volunteers, as well as the gardening public. Materials and instructional methods and steps, I think, is always the hardest part to get, to be short and concise with, to keep it clear for everyone being involved. And so that's why it's easiest for me to use bullet points and then convert those into sentences. So things that I included were how master gardeners were used in this particular scenario. So they developed the topic ideas. They were the organizers and presenters. We did have to train some of them on how to use Zoom. So there was delivery and registration that we used our Zoom platform for. We offered recordings and then described the marketing and the distribution of that. So these were all kind of bullet points to help me think about how am I meeting those things. So what were my educational methods? What curriculum did I use? How did I market that particular program? Any other important information? And then last but not least, probably a very important part of one of the things that we're looking at here is our report of results and participation. So again, this is where the numbers come in. So these would be our outputs and who we reached. Again, there was a variety of master gardener and public entities. We did ask for that in our registration. So we were able to track who was a member of the gardening public and who was a master gardener. 948 total participants. It was a weekly session. We did have an evaluation poll at the end of that under evaluation and impact. And then we took a look at, I think it was 6 questions, but some key poll results. And then again, you can see how that was transitioned into a paragraph about that information. So just a quick example there to kind of show you how you can utilize those questions or how you can utilize the rubric or a worksheet to develop your abstract. I'll stop there. How's that?
Okay.
Any questions that anyone has?
Yeah,
Thoughts, comments?
yeah, I don't see any in the chat, but if you would like to add any type of question in the chat, you may do so now. Heather asked me to do an introduction, which I did, but probably not really what she wanted me to do. So as I was thinking about it, annually, the Horticulture Committee receives about 25 to 30 abstracts. Different years, we have different spaces or numbers of presentations of abstracts we can have. In Montana, we will have 12 slots. So that means if we get 30, we don't even get to accept half of the abstracts. That is why we're doing this Zoom today, to make sure that you can write the best abstract possible if you want to present in Montana. I do believe that the abstract number has gone up for word length. I think it used to be 250, so now it's 350. I think that's very exciting because 250, you really couldn't get complete sentences in there if you wanted to try to answer all those questions. These abstracts are due in and submitted in the portal on the NACAA website by March 15th. On March 16th, I will be creating our spreadsheet to review your abstracts. So they must be in on the 15th. And then our committee right now is planning on meeting March 20th to select those 12 top abstracts, because I know some people are waiting to find out if they can present to be able to know if they can go to Montana. So we are trying to do our very best to get this streamlined for you, so you can make your plans if you are coming and presenting. So my goal would be is, if we can get that all done by the 20th and the next day, the 21st or so, maybe March 24th, because I do have an event on the 21st. But anyway, we are going to try to let you know if you are selected before registration goes out, so you know if you need to register. Okay, Heather, was there anything else that you thought maybe I should let folks know, number wise?
Actually, I mean, that's great. That's a good time to kind of interject that. I'm not thinking, I just thought you would, you know what I mean? You're the chair of the group, so you introduced everyone and you got us off and started, and that was a good time to interject that
Okay.
information.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, yep. So our participants know that. If you'll stop sharing, I'm
I
going
will do
to
that.
share a presentation, or an abstract, I guess is the right word. And I have asked permission to do this. So this is everybody seeing that? Growing the lavender industry in
Looks
Missouri.
good. Looks
Okay.
good.
So Kelly, I believe, did this. Let me see. So, and she sent in this abstract in 2022. It was not accepted. We do give feedback if the author wants feedback. And so she asked for some feedback and then she resubmitted in 23 and made it and was able to present. So the first thing I just wanted to show was growing the lavender industry in Missouri. This is very specific. And sometimes as Heather already mentioned, if it doesn't seem like it can be done in many other areas of the nation, then it might get rated lower because it's very niche. But if you see the next year, when she just even in the title, combining field research and education to grow the lavender industry. I cannot speak today. I am so sorry. In Missouri. Um, just that title then can help other people say, well, okay, well, maybe it's not lavender, maybe it's pecans, or maybe it's apples, or whatever. So just even in your title, think about the broader picture of horticulture. The first year that she submitted her abstract was 125 words. So in 125 words, you cannot answer all those questions that we need to know. So while it said what they kind of did, it missed a lot of key things. It did not have a conclusion. It did not have a summary. It did not speak on methods and different things. So there was just a lot missing. And she had the words to do it, even if it was only to 250. So I'm not going to read that, but it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't enough. So for some of the things that I looked at. Maybe for the format, she got 10 and the grammar 10, but the content out of that 60 points, I rated that probably it was only about a 35. And then for the end, for being replicable and applicable to other places, that scored very low. But when she redid it the next year after, giving some information, like I said, it improved just by the title. Um, she used 250 words, and I think that was the maximum at that time. You see now that there's a lot more dates and participation numbers and how many plants were used and how it's going to be used in the future and how there was classroom and in-field learning and how this can be replicated in other types of research. So she used all the words at that time. That was the maximum. Probably could even been a little bit better at 350. So I think that you just see adding that information and adding the numbers and things like that improve this abstract greatly. So is there any questions on that? Or Heather, do you have any comments? Oh, so for this one, when I rescored it, it was, the same for that formatting and grammar, about 10 points each. But when we got up to the content, It was closer to that 60-point range, instead of where it was. And both of these abstracts were not with the new rubric that we're using right now, so the numbers are a little bit different, but I think you can see how that greatly improved. Any comments or questions? Okay. Oh, yes, okay.
I just threw in the chat that if you have ideas or if you have tips or tricks or things that work for you, or that have been a positive approach to take, or you'd like a copy of the presentation guide just with some of those breakout slides, feel free to do that. I'm happy to share that information with you all. No problems there. But if you have ideas that you think might work, I think it's best we can all learn from each other. So any questions? I know we've had a few folks kind of join us here in the time frame.
Yeah, I had this meeting scheduled on the wrong time on my calendar. So the rubric, I think Scott sent me something, but I noticed on the authors it said like D.3, K.5 or something on the one that you just shared.
Go ahead, Cindy. Did you want to?
Um,
And I can also watch the recording. I don't want you guys to have to hash through what you already went
so
through.
I think, are you just talking about because there was multiple speaker or multiple authors to the abstract?
Yeah, I just didn't recognize there was like a number code behind people's
Yeah,
names on the lavender one.
yes. Now my whole thing sort of disappeared. But yeah, so because there were multiple authors, she labeled them as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then gave their location in Missouri because it was I don't know if it was a statewide, but it was a regional multi-county effort. So if you have several authors or people that you want on there, then you can do that. But most of our abstracts come in with just one author.
So if it's like a team project that I lead, but I'm the only one drafting the abstract, like maybe put them on the poster title, but don't include them on the abstract, or
That would be fine. There is sometimes if you, and somebody might need to help me with this, but everybody on there needs to be an NACAA member, I believe. So if they're not a member, please, it would be better not to have them on there. So,
So I can share an example that I have. Like for the last several years, I've done a poster presentation for a multi-year project with one of our leading researchers here. And there is a postdoc. So I always have multiples on my abstract, but since I'm the primary person and I'm the NACAA member submitting that and involved in that project, my name typically goes first. And so we base everything on percentage of contribution. So I always feel like our perspective at Ohio State is, and this may be different depending upon the region, right? Depending upon your academic institution. We always break things out in percentages because we're required to do that in our dossiers, right? If you're a faculty member, you have to basically explain that. And our annual reports require us to do that as well and share what that is. So it's my experience is that you should definitely, include those people if they're sharing a percentage of your work. Beyond that, I'm not sure, because like I said, I thought that at least the primary person or the person submitting that had to be the NACAA member. So I have listed others.
And Justin, just to clarify, our committee only reads and approves abstracts. We do not grade or rate the poster session. That is a different committee. And Rebecca put in that she would like a copy of the presentation. This is being recorded, and I believe you'll be able to get that off of the NACA website after
But if
today.
she wants my slides, I'll be happy to put that in a PDF and have
Okay.
that available too.
Okay.
Of our slide set.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Oh, so thank you, Scott. Heather is correct. You can put non-NACAA members, but make sure that you're the first, and then make sure that you are attending if it's an abstract, because a non-member cannot do the presentation. Or at least there might be some other thing, but that's what I'm gonna say. Especially this year that I think it's going to be extremely competitive. We want, our members to have the first choice there. If it's a non-NACAA member, they could, co-talk with you, but you do need to be there.
My goal is always to say, well, you need to join.
And maybe we can get another member. Yes. So Scott is helping me with my words because I'm having some problems. They can't be the lead presenter, but they can co-talk. Yes. Okay. Um, Heather, Danny's not on today, and I haven't seen Jenny either, and
So
Andy's not.
Ginny couldn't find her link, so I sent her the information. So Andy might be up next.
Okay, and I'm not sure Andy hasn't done this in the past, so he's new on our committee, but we will see if we just throw him right in.
I think
Hey,
he can do it.
I jumped right in, so let me, I've got a short PowerPoint. I'll get that pulled up. If it'll allow me.
Is it acting like it will allow you to share, or do we
No,
need?
it's got a system issue on my end, but I'll just walk through it.
Okay.
So since I came in after the abstracts were judged for this last year, I came onto the committee after that. I went back through and just kind of took the new rubric that we helped create and kind of pulled one of the abstracts and just kind of went through it and just kind of highlighted how they had kind of hit the format, hit all the key points of the content in their abstract. They had a very general topic. So the topic was propagating native plants from local germplasm. But essentially what they did is the first couple of sentences they stated, here's our context, here's the issue or the need that we're trying to meet. And so they stated that right up first. As you go through the next couple of sentences, just stated their purpose, their objective to what they're trying to achieve from that. And then they covered the materials and the methodology in that middle section in a couple of sentences on how many different plant species they worked with, where they took the collections from, the propagation methods that they used. And
Andy,
then,
can I interrupt? Is this William Erickson's abstract? I can pull that up.
yes,
If you'd like,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, that would be good. We'll just pause for a quick moment here and there you go.
Yeah, so yeah, on the first couple of sentences, they give their background the context or the issue that they're looking at. They're looking how can we further get this local germplasm into the industry, and so what are the needs? Then they move on to, okay, our purpose is we wanted to be able to support the industry and provide them with some standardized protocols that they could use for both vegetative and seed production, seed propagation of locally collected material. And then they also stated in there that they involved the master gardeners in the project to help with the collection and everything. Then they talked about the materials, and then they go through there in that last little bit, they talk about their findings. Okay, we took cuttings of these plants. These ones were successful enough and a high enough rate that it made it easy that we could put easy propagation protocols for the industry to put together. They listed which species were the very successful. And then they talked about, yes, there were other species that had the lower success rates, that needed some additional development of their protocols before recommendations could be made. They talked about the seed process that they were going through. And then they kind of sum it up at the end that we took these propagation methods, the success rates, put a document, compiled them together into a resource that they could give to their industry partners to help with this propagation method. So it kind of hits all those key points that the abstract content that the rubric is looking for over the course of that. So just kind of taking one from last year and kind of applying it to the new rubric on how those key points fit.
Did you actually rate it, Andy? What did you come up with a number?
No, I actually didn't rate it. I just kind of went through and looked at, well, this one kind of hit all of the key points. And so that's kind of how I kind of looked at that. But yeah, it would be easy to go in and rate that one because they did have those points in there.
Any questions here while we take just a few minutes for Andy or for Cindy about the rubric? Anyone, is anyone like really brand new? Like this might be your first NACAA submission? I'm just curious to see if anyone.
So I did want to let everybody know that the one that Andy picked, he was our highest rated rubric last year at 84%. So he, even though we have a new rubric this year, still he was meeting all those things. And if Andy had rated his, with the new rubric, it still would have probably been, at that higher level.
So again, is anybody like a first time or 5 years or less kind of person, or maybe it's your first time submitting something in the horticulture and turfgrass program area? I'm just curious if anyone's willing to share.
Yeah, this is my first time submitting.
Are you a new Justin? Are you like new to NACAA?
I'm not new, but Montana really was like you know, I wanted to go to Montana more than I wanted to kind of go to Dallas. So this was like
Gotcha.
I was like, I got some professional development money. I'm gonna go this year. And so the grading of the abstracts, is there like a threshold below? It's like, okay, if it's below this, then it doesn't get submitted, or if it's the highest, like it's definitely going to be presented nationally, because I'll be submitting a poster abstract. So there's the abstract and the poster. I guess I'm trying to understand.
So, what we do is all five of us on the committee individually rate each abstract against the rubric. And then we put all those together and then take the average. If one of our committee members also writes a rubric, they don't grade their own. So don't worry about that. And we don't usually do a threshold, but we want these abstracts to score pretty high. You know, we want it to be worth people's time to come and listen to it and stuff. So I will say that my husband rates very stringently, yeah, or stingily, or whatever the right word would be.
Yeah.
You know, so we all read it in a little bit of a different way, but then when we average it out, you know, it seems like if it's a really good abstract, we all rate them really well, you know, and if it's and maybe, you know, Danny doesn't read between the lines, where sometimes I say, oh, I think that they're getting there, you know, but anyway. So there's not exactly a threshold, but if these abstracts aren't getting like a 75% or above, then it's probably not going to happen. But like I said, usually we have 25 to 30. We only have 12 spots, so it's going to be the very best that will be selected.
And so what you're talking about now is the abstract for presentations.
Correct, yes.
And so is that a different rubric than the abstract for posters?
Yes.
Okay.
And the horticulture abstract is a different rubric than other abstracts. And Heather, where did you find that again, in the magazine or online?
The actual, I actually have links here. If you want to pull up the NACAA website and you're looking at posters, I have that at the end of the presentation, but if Cindy pulls that up, you can see that there's a section, Justin, where you would go in and there's a poster section, and then there's also, so both have abstracts. So you're no longer required to put the abstract on the poster. And that, you know what I mean? So it used to be we had to put the abstract on the poster. Now it's just the basic information on the poster, right? And then those abstracts go into the proceedings. They always went into the proceedings, but several years ago they removed them from the posters.
Cool.
So did you find that, Cindy, just to kind of,
So anyway,
you're having,
so this is the dashboard,
that's you, yeah.
and
Go
then
to, go under professional development. Just click on professional development, it'll pull up. Okay. And then as you scroll down, you'll be able to see where it says posters and presentations. If you click on posters and expand that, you'll see the year, but you want to click on guidelines over here on the left-hand side. And so there will be general instructions. There's the direct link for the poster application. And you can see there's some notes there. You have the option too, if you want your poster to be eligible for awards. If you want it to be judged, Justin, you have to upload that. But they get judged. I'm trying to think, they get judged on site. I'm guessing we're doing that in Montana. We have poster judges to be able to do that. So Cindy, if you scroll down, you'll see all the guidelines listed there. And that was the instructions for submitting, the general guidelines for posters. And there's one additional, I think, handout there that talks about quality posters, and their scorecard is listed. Tips for making an effective poster presentation, kind of like how they judged for outstanding posters, what they're looking for. So posters is a different ball game. And then Cindy, if you go back over and click on presentations, you'll see the call is there. It shows you the purpose, who's eligible, describes that, the recognition that's there. how to make an entry. There's the general presentation score sheet that's used by the other committees, and there is the new rubric for the horticulture committee.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that is. So on the posters, like there's the state winner, but do they all go to be judged to potentially be a national winner, or will only the state winner be eligible to be judged for a national winner? And this might be a question for somebody else.
So for us in Ohio, posters get submitted by a variety of people and it's up to the individual. So we don't have a state winner. I mean, in Ohio, we don't go through that process. So
Awesome.
we do that for individual awards. You know, so if you're submitting a column or something like that, then a state winner is picked. But we don't do that for posters. So awards is a separate category, Justin, just so you know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the detail.
Not a problem. Other questions? Jeannie's having a problem getting on, just so you know. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of give you a couple references that I have. And maybe we can are you guys seeing the regular screen there? Okay. So these are some links here to references and resources. Oregon State University has a nice how to write an abstract. They put that out there for their undergraduate research folks. And it works really nice. Eric, which is, I think, the Institute for Science, I think it's educational, I'm trying to think what Eric stands for, just left me. But it's Institute of Science. They have a nice guidance sheet. In fact, I really liked their writing. If you look under style and formatting, their writing considerations, they have a nice guide there to kind of walk people through. And then being good extension folks, we know our friends at the University of Wisconsin are the folks, the originators. They kind of hold all of the research based around the logic model and around how we relate that to the educational programs that we do. So if you're not familiar with that model as an extension educator, you may have been trained. There are other models of extension education, but the logic model is probably the most widely recognized. And so it's just good to review that, right? To be thinking about how you're organizing your information and that you're including that information when you present, because those are the key things that most of us are looking for when we're entering that into some sort of performance management or evaluation system. So those were the three references that I did some research on as we were looking at updating the rubric. And then these are the links that Cindy was able to just show you for those that are out there. And I just did a screenshot. That's our committee, you know, who represents who, and our email addresses for you all to kind of have. And I know that if you're a member and you're logged in, they should be able to see this. Is that right, Cindy? They should be able to find our information. I know it comes out in the County Agent magazine too. So if you just need to.
If you go to the horticulture committee, it should be there.
Okay. And let's see here. I'll stop sharing and we can have some conversation. Elizabeth, I know you turned your camera on. Did you have questions or comments that you wanted to share?
Well, hi, everyone. I just wanted to make some comments, and I'm sorry, I have some workers who are in the building and I have to be going back and forth. Yeah, I'm not here particularly for horticulture, but I have been involved with NACAA for quite a few years, but I've never submitted anything. And I just did want a review on how to write a good abstract. I don't really do research per se, but yeah, I wanted to do a poster. And so the whole just getting involved in professional development and publications and writing down like the Eric Guide to Writing Abstracts, you know, that's going to be a really good resource. I did print out everything on the website here for how to submit a good poster. So this is just a really good reminder and an encouragement to actually get something done because I haven't.
Well, and it can be overwhelming if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to take this project that has all of this information, right? Whether it's a program we're doing or research that we're doing, it's just trying to pare it down, right? And so
Mhm.
most of us in extension have the gift of the gab, the gift of presentation, right? We're good at what we do. We engage in relationships, right? So sometimes it's hard for us not to want to share more information, but kind of being in that mindset. So that's why I said for me, I had a mentor who kind of introduced that whole idea of, just answer the questions, Heather, bullet what you're doing, and then you know how to write sentences. You can write a sentence about this. And if you need help doing that, I mean, I've helped other folks who are submitting for the first time. I've reviewed things, given them things like, hey, think about this, or you're missing this information. So that's what I had somebody do for me the first time I submitted, and it was very beneficial. And so, that for now, I just pay that back. So yeah,
And
Elizabeth, you need to like figure out what you're doing there and get something submitted.
yeah,
And if
Yeah,
for
I
some reason
know.
you
I
don't
do.
succeed,
Thank you.
try again, right, Cindy?
yeah, and I think Elizabeth brings up a good point that we did not talk about. We did have a committee member and an author who would submit, and she said, look, my stuff doesn't meet the rubric. I don't do traditional research. And so that's why Heather, went through that rubric and really added how you can, even if it's something that, doesn't have a beautiful data sheet or whatever, even if it's something that has been online or social media or something like that. Well, how many clicks are you getting? How many links have been opened? How many comments did you have? It doesn't have to be traditional planning, something out in a field. And so we spent a lot of time, working with her to, let her know there are ways that you can say that you've had methods and materials and data and conclusions and things like that, even if it isn't, in a row out in the garden. So, don't think that everything has to be, real deep research, because sometimes our greatest programs aren't that type of program. So,
Right, right. And I'm actually I'm a tribal extension agent, so there's not too many of us in this country. So
You're right.
what I can offer could have a little bit of value to everybody.
Well, I think it's good to think about that fact for you, Elizabeth. Like for me, even though I may not have, like I'm in Ohio, so I don't deal a lot with tribal, I mean with tribal clientele, but we have a very large population of plain communities or Amish. So things that you may be identifying, right, that can work, working with a specific population, I could maybe relate to. So I would encourage you as you submit that to be thinking about how does my work with a tribal or a special population also apply to maybe additional special populations, right?
Right.
How might I see that? So it's sometimes about keeping that open mind, and even as educators being able to kind of see beyond like the details, right, of that program. Or it may be the actual program you're doing. The population may not matter. It may just be your
Yeah.
program content too. So
and something we've been talking a lot about in North Carolina is therapeutic horticulture, which I have recently learned horticulture therapy and therapeutic horticulture are not the same things. But anyway, so it might be something that, is not very qualitative. One of these best uh, examples, can be testimonials or things like that from a participant that can be in this abstract that would really make some of these, the content or whatever and the purpose and all that much more, um, interesting for all of us. So anyway, really, sometimes it doesn't, you might say, well, I can't submit this, that, whatever, this participant, it's only one participant. Well, that's okay. It doesn't have to be thousands of people that were reached for a certain thing. It's really the quality of the program and making sure you're using your words, all 350 of them, to to make sure that we can understand what you're doing.
Those 350 words are a prize, so you need to take full advantage to get the best abstract out there.
I'm sorry.
Other questions?
How long are the actual presentation slots?
That's a good question. So it's 20 minutes. And that is, kind of your setup and takedown, as you might say,
Question and
so
answer.
lots of times if you can get there early, and we can get them all loaded onto the computer, then we don't have to take, a minute or two of your time. We usually say probably think about 15 to 17 minutes, and then so you can have a few minutes for questions, but usually it's a 20-minute slot.
And most of us are your moderators in those sessions, so we have the hook and cane, right? Well, we can
Yeah,
pull you
usually
off
we're
stage.
up front and we usually give you the 5-minute warning. And we will stand up if and take that mic back if need be. But anyway.
And is the date of the presentation scheduled yet?
Yes. So it's Monday, June 30th from 8:30 to 11:30, and Tuesday, July 1st, 8:30 to 11:30. So that is something also, if you are writing for multiple abstracts and multiple committees, it does sometimes happen that, you might be selected for more than one. And so, we got to make sure that you're not in two rooms at the same time. And then also think if your horticulture topic really would be better in a different committee, it's okay to put it in a different committee. And I do believe, and I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, I think some people have put in the same topic in two different committees, but I don't know if you're really supposed to do that.
You're not.
Okay.
We to be honest, we had a little bit of a problem with that last year, and two committees selected the same exact presentation and the person gave it in two different rooms. So we're trying to avoid that. So what we ask is that you only submit it, and don't try to pull a fast one and just change 3 words in the title, but it's the same exact presentation, because we've had that happen as well. But do it for the primary one that you think is good. And if the committee that's reviewing it thinks it's a really good one, but either can't fit it into their 12 or thinks it would fit better in another one, then the committee chairs will talk with each other and say, hey, will you consider accepting this one? So, but it's hard on the national level for us to catch when, for example, Cindy may not realize that it was also submitted in another committee. And until we go in and actually start piecing together the program, we didn't catch one of them last year. That individual gave 2 similar presentations. So we're trying to avoid that a little bit. Justin, if you don't mind, I know you also asked the question, and I'm sorry, Cindy and Heather, I mean, and it goes back to the posters, but he asked about the judging process. For you to advance to the regional judging level, yes, you do have to be the state winner in the category for posters. So remember, there's two categories for posters. There's research and there's extension education. So ultimately, when we get to the national level, it's been narrowed down to only 24 posters that are being judged. They've already gone through the state, regional, basically each category, you're going to get 3 regional winners in each category. So there'll be 12 and 12. That'll be the only on-site judging. All the earlier judging takes place by the chair and vice chairs based on the PDF submission that you uploaded showing what your poster looks like. So but then there's also that option if you don't want to have your poster judged and you just want it for display only, you can pick that choice when you're submitting your application for it. So anyway, kind of long-winded answer to your question, but yes, you do have to be the state winner to move on up in the process.
Yeah, and we don't know about posters as much as we should, so we're
Well,
sorry
no, it's
you down the wrong road on that, Justin, but thank you
No,
so much
that's
for
all good.
clarifying. Okay, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be over in an hour or not. But is there any other questions that any of us can help you with?
Have to answer correctly.
Maybe. Only horticulture abstracts. That's the only thing we're willing to answer. No, I'm joking. This is being recorded. I'm a jokester, everybody. Well, please feel free to reach out to anybody on the committee. We would love to help you to make sure that your abstract can be a winning horticulture abstract. So. Okay, if there's nothing else, Scott, I think you can hit stop recording.